Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. Hi there, it's me. I am your host, Eric Herlock, and I've got a show for you today. We're talking to Morris Beegle. Yeah, Morris Beegle from the NoCo Hemp Expo, from Let's Talk Hemp, from WAFBA. He's been on the show a bunch. I first met Morris back in the summer of 2021 when I showed up in front of his house in an RV. Fort Collins, Colorado. Since then, we've gotten to know each other at various hemp events, and, I talk to him periodically. So that's what we're doing today, checking in with Morris before Thanksgiving. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is made possible with support from IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. IND Hemp is a family-owned, mission-driven feed, food, fuel, and fiber company that is bringing new opportunities to American farmers in Montana and across the United States. Check them out at indhemp.com. And also, they would like you to go show your support for the One Plant documentary film. Go to the show page for this episode, click on the link, and throw in some money to support the One Plant documentary film that is telling the story of the hemp industry. This episode is also made possible with support from Impactful Ventures, a public benefit investment company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in reversing the adverse effects of climate change. Explore what they do at impactfulventures.org. That's MPACTFUL ventures.org. All right, so we're going to jump into my conversation with Morris Beegle here in just a moment, but I wanted to give you a heads up on something else that I thought you might enjoy. So, here at Lancaster Farming, the Industrial Hemp Podcast is not the only podcast that we're making. I may have mentioned it before, but beginning of last year, we launched another podcast that we call Farmhouse, and this is sort of an exploration in women in agriculture. It's hosted by my colleagues Candace Wierzbowski and Stephanie Spiker. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts. It's called Farmhouse. Check it out. So anyway, I'm telling you about this now because last week we published an episode with Christine Smart. Right, Christine Smart from Agritech, Cornell's campus up there in Geneva. She's involved in the hemp program up there, but it's a fascinating look at what else she does. So for those of you who are interested in the people who make up the hemp industry, go listen to that one. And then also, the week before that, we published an interview on the Farmhouse with Melissa Nelson Baldwin from South Bend Industrial Hemp in South Bend, Kansas. So yeah, again, something that folks in the hemp industry probably want to go hear because these are the people who are building your industry. So I'll put links on the show page for this episode. That's your homework assignment. Go listen to those. Also, go to oneplant.film and support their Kickstarter. All right, finally, let's talk hemp with Morris Beegle. Morris Beegle, welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric, and thanks for having me on. It's always good to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the last time I saw you was out in Minnesota back in September.
Yep, and then right before that was Pennsylvania.
In Lancaster, yeah. But you've been doing a lot of stuff since then, and I know what it's like. Late November now, so I'm starting to think about the year in review. What has. So I thought I'd get your perspective because you have an interesting perspective on the hemp industry, to say the least.
Well, thank you, and I do have a perspective. Interesting or not, I do have perspective.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about for you what were some of the looking back, what were some of the high points for you in 2024 hemp wise?
Well, we moved NoCo Hemp Expo again. We moved NoCo from southern Colorado at the Broadmoor, which we had only been there for a year. Then we moved it back to northern Colorado in Estes Park, which you joined us at.
Hmm.
And so that transition went pretty good overall. We're going to be back there next year for our 11th annual, where
Okay.
we will take it to 11 and be one louder than this year.
Yeah.
And so that was a pretty solid event overall, covering all aspects from fiber, grain, cannabinoids, flower, intoxicants, the getting kind of the entire round table of categories at the event, I thought was pretty productive.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of work to do there, different factions and cliques and stuff, but I thought that went well. I took over the organization of the European Industrial Hemp Association Conference, the AHA
Oh,
conference,
right. Yep.
and we did that in Prague this year, which you came out
Oh,
to.
yeah. I was there too. Right. So long ago now. I almost forgot I went to Prague.
Yeah, that was in June, and that was a solid event, really good programming, a good group of people were out there. So I'm happy about how that went. And we're going to be doing that again next year, and we're moving it to Berlin for the 22nd annual and Experience Hemp Berlin. So excited about that.
That's cool.
That will be the last year for Daniel Cruz to be the president of AHA. He's going to be transitioning on, and well, when we say transition here in the United States, people get all kinds of things, but I don't think he's transitioning in that way. He's transitioning out of AHA presidency.
There are many ways to transition, but yeah, for him, he's essentially retiring from that position and has, I don't know, bigger fish to fry or other fish to fry, whatever the idiomatic phrase is there. Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's got his hands in both the hemp side and the cannabis side in Germany, and they've got a cannabis company, I think, that's publicly traded. So he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's been one of these guys that's been around for a long time.
He comes up through like the food space too, right? Doesn't he have some connections with the food industry?
Food industry, textiles, cannabinoids. He's got his hands in pretty much everything. He's certainly one of the top people out there in the world and somebody I really look up to. He's done a lot of great work over the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. So you've been working sort of hand in hand with AHA to plan the next one.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm working with Lorenza and Monica. Monica's really my point person there, and we communicate on a regular basis, and she goes back and forth between the boards. So she's the liaison, and she's awesome too. So I really appreciate working with them. I think that there's a lot of um, good work that can be done between the United States and Europe. They can provide us, assistance in a lot of things. They've been at it for longer than we have and gone through a lot of the growing pains that we're going through here. Although we have it a little bit differently with adult use cannabis and cannabinoids and the intoxicants and stuff. So they haven't seen that like we've seen it, and we're going through it right now. So
Right. Well, your work with AHA in Europe isn't the only international work or travel that you've been doing lately, right? You've been to Japan, and I think you just went to Peru. Is that right?
yep, went to Japan on the U.S. delegation that was part of NIHC, National
Hmm.
Industrial Hemp Council. There was a group of like 25 of us that went out there for 10 days, and that was a great trip to get a bunch of Americans out there and kind of see what's going on in Japan, which that market is challenging out there. The fiber market is pretty minimal outside of they got this golden hemp that's been going on for generations, and it goes to Shinto temples, and it's ceremonial and it's hand processed. It's really cool. Um, there's that side of it, which is restricted because of cannabinoids, and they've got new regulations that are getting ready to go into place here in a few weeks, where it's almost non-existent THC.
Like zero tolerance for THC. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 part per million or something like that. And their policy is based on US policy. Unfortunately, the United States policy has influenced the rest of the world. And now that we're changing policy, the rest of the world is still kind of stuck in this drug war mindset, and they definitely are in Japan. And hopefully, our influence will spread to the parts of the world that we've misinfluenced, so to speak, and these other parts of the world that are so up in arms about THC, not that we still aren't, but it's like hopefully some of those restrictions will lessen and we can have kind of a harmonized regulatory situation around the globe where we can do international trade and it just won't be roadblocks and weird snafus all over the place.
I appreciate your optimism.
Well, I don't know how long it's going to take. I wish it would be done here in the next year, but I don't think that that's going to be the situation.
Yeah. What was the trip to Peru about? Tell me about that.
So this was organized by GCNC, which is Chris Day and Jillian Reddish. They used to work for MJ Biz. They're partners of mine and NoCo. They've got this global cannabis network collective.
Okay.
And so they've got partners in Peru, Futura Farms, Jose Escalante and his partner Rafael. They're opening up the market there. They've got a medical cannabis market. They have an industrial hemp law that passed, which is actually 1% THC, which is great. They have not implemented the regulatory program there yet. So one of the big things going out there was sitting down with me and Patrick and some other U.S. delegates talking about the regulatory side of things and what we've done here in the US. It's been good and bad, and looking at Europe and Canada and hopefully advising them on some pitfalls so they don't go through some of the same stuff that we've gone through. And so I think that there's a really good opportunity for Peru to participate in the industrial hemp market, as well as South America on the whole, because Argentina, right as soon as we were there, I think it was even at the end of the trip, they just passed their new regulatory process for industrial hemp. And now Brazil just passed their medicinal hemp side of things. So I think that you're going to see a lot more things opening up in South America. And I think that's going to provide US operators a chance for export and consulting and maybe some machinery and opportunities for US operators to participate in that marketplace.
So when you say, industrial hemp, are they doing fiber and grain, or is it the cannabinoid side of hemp?
It's fiber and grain in Peru, and then all cannabinoids fall into the medical cannabis program. And there's like two different levels of that. There's the THC side, and then there's a CBD side. So if you want to get a prescription, the CBD prescription is less intrusive, I guess, than the THC side.
Okay.
So they have two different sides of their medical cannabis, but
That's
industrial hemp is
interesting.
fiber and grain.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I
I
think
like
the
that
same for
division.
Argentina.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Argentina too.
Yeah, but like in Colombia, they've got full-on CBD that's part of and that's also 1%, but that's their hemp program encompasses CBD.
Yeah.
And I think that the Brazil program is also going to be CBD.
Yeah. You know how I feel about it. I think it's a linguistic thing. Like, I think hemp should just mean industrial hemp, fiber, grain, feed, fuel, that kind of thing. And we should use the word cannabis to denote, medicinal or recreational uses of the chemical compounds of the
Well,
plant.
when you say chemical, so that Patrick Atagi likes to separate it from commodities and chemical side. So it's in delineating them, and I agree. I think that, and while I think that the chemical side, if they're non-intoxicating, CBD, CBG, there's a pathway for natural supplements there. But if there is intoxicating, then it can go into adult use. I do not think that non-intoxicating cannabinoids should be 21 plus, personally, and I don't know where that's going to go, but they are here in Colorado now. It's like my sister-in-law went to Vitamin Cottage and bought some CBD capsules, and she got carded, and she's like 65 years old, and it's like that to me just doesn't make sense. You go to Vitamin Cottage to get a dietary supplement, and
Right.
even though the FDA says that they're not dietary supplements, they are. And hopefully that will change during this new administration, depending on who heads up Health and Human Services and the FDA and that sort of thing.
I guess the main idea is how to bifurcate the cannabis plant into two different industries, right? That's what you were talking about, like the commodities versus the chemical.
Right. And is it two different industries or is it more than two industries? I think we can easily say that fiber and grain is industrial hemp. And then when you then take compounds from hemp that's 0.3% or less or 1% or less, those other compounds, while they're being produced by a hemp plant, um, if they're not intoxicating, is that that's another lane or category? And then if they are intoxicating, then they're on the adult use side. And is that adult use side different than the cannabis side that's medical and recreational cannabis? Because we're seeing, like in Minnesota, when we were out there, me and Cameron McIntosh and Andy Bish went out to the bars in Minneapolis after the event, and I sat there and I ordered a 10 milligram THC beverage and a beer and sat there and watched football, at the bar with THC drink and an
Yeah.
alcohol drink. And it was
Huh.
like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you can go into the liquor store and buy that. So
But
they
that's not a hemp drink, right? So I
it
guess
is a
my
hemp drink. That's a hemp derived D9 seltzer.
yeah, so I guess my like hot take here is that I don't think hemp should mean anything other than fiber and grain and the commodity side of stuff. I think if anything, if you're doing the chemical compounds and extracting it, no matter what you're taking it from, can it just be, cannabinoidal compounds? Does it have to use the word hemp?
Right. Well, that is a great discussion that we're going to continue to have because there's certainly the folks that are on that chemical side that are utilizing hemp in a way for the intoxicants, where there's opinions on, let's say, our side, the industrial side, that really shouldn't be the case because that's never the way it's been. This stuff came about post Farm Bill and really post pandemic with the oversupply of material. And it's like, what can we do with all this stuff? And lab people figured out how to do the conversion. And then here's a new category. And hey, look at hemp gets you high when hemp didn't get you high. And now it's billions and billions of dollars, and
Yeah.
they're at the lobbying table and all of this stuff. And so we've got a little conundrum going on that we have to figure out as an industry.
I think what we need is a time machine, right? If you can go back in time, let's say 150 years, maybe less, and you take a survey of people on the street and you say, "Hey, what's hemp?" And they'll tell you what it is, right? And you say, "What's cannabis?" And they'll be like, "Oh, that's the medicine that comes in the little jars," right? Because we've been using it as medicine. If you look at old apothecary jars, there's cannabis in there, and I think we didn't know it was THC or CBD or whatever, but it was like, we knew there was chemical compounds in there that had, extra properties. So I don't know. I think what I need to do is interview a linguist and like get into this and like figure it out once and for all. And then write letters to everybody in the hemp beverage industry and say, sorry, that's a cannabis drink.
Right. Well, we can discuss all this again and get everybody at NoCo again. Let's all get there and have these discussions because um, it is problematic. It's caused problems for all of us, and we need to work through this as an industry. And even though we don't all see eye to eye on different things depending on where we operate. I'm a advocate and a generalist. I put on a show and I try to appease as many people as possible, and I try to be as agnostic as possible
Right, right.
based on the way the law is written. And if you look at the way the law is written and the way that Bob Hoban will argue in favor of it, which you've had Bob on your
Yep,
show.
yep. It's not a loophole in his view. It's just like that's the way it's written, and then let the industry proceed from there, right?
Right. And, there's certainly a lot of people that do think it's a loophole. And whether it's a loophole or it's not a loophole, it's something that's causing great conflict within our industry. And it takes up all the oxygen in the room, and it's hurting fiber and grain from elevating to the level of where we want it to go, and the great uh, um, benefits that it can provide society, health wise, environmental wise, and our farmers having a new crop to rotate in with corn and
All the
soy,
good stuff. Yeah.
because the people that are growing corn and soy and wheat are want to grow industrial hemp. They don't want to grow medical cannabis or
Right. It just
therapeutic cannabis.
yeah.
That's not their thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So Speaking of NoCo, when is the NoCo 11? What are the dates?
April 10th through the 12th.
10th through the 12th. Okay. Um, Estes Park, I had never been there before until I went there last year. And that was great. It's such an amazing place to have an event. And I thought it was great because you had the hotel sort of across the street from the expo hall.
Yeah.
And, it kept people moving. You got people out into the Colorado sunshine. So, yeah, I think that's a fantastic place for NoCo 11. Turn it up.
Yeah, and we're gonna, now that we've been there once, we'll make some adjustments on certain things. I had a great conversation with the owner of the Stanley Hotel last week, and we're gonna do something there. And obviously, that's a iconic hotel where The Shining was based from Stephen King and so forth. So it'll be
Yeah.
fun.
I went in there a couple of times while I was there. I walked around. And yeah, I guess like he was like maybe the winter caretaker there one year, and he had some dreams, and it sort of gave rise to this story that became The Shining,
Right.
which I tried to read. I had never read it before. I've never actually seen the movie either, so a lot of the references when I was out there were kind of lost on me. But I thought it was cool. I definitely the imagery of here's Johnny and all that stuff, but I'm not a horror movie guy. But I walked around there and you could feel it. It was spooky. There's some weird stuff in there.
Yeah.
But on the way to Prague, I was like, oh, I'll read The Shining on the airplane, right? So I got like 3 chapters in, and I just did not enjoy it. It's like oh, this character is terrible. I mean, it was well written, but it's like, do I need this junk in my head? No. So I stopped reading it, changed course a little bit, and then after 5 days in Prague, I'm packing up my hotel room. I'm like, oh, I have this paperback book of The Shining. What should I do with it? So I left it in the drawer of the nightstand table in my hotel room in Prague, kind of like a Gideon Bible.
There you go. So get your choice. Well, you can either read the Bible or you can read The Shining.
I don't know if the Gideons put the Bibles in the hotels in Europe, because I didn't see one over there. But, maybe somebody in whatever room I was in at the Grand Prague Hotel will get a surprise Shining. Yeah. Why am I telling you this? I don't know. People tune in to the show to hear really inane things. I don't know.
Hey, they don't all have to relate to hemp. We can go off track a little bit here and there.
Yeah. All right. So what else? So we talked about the year in review. We talked about Japan and Peru. And now you're going to Thailand in a few weeks or in a few days?
I'm going to Thailand on Sunday, which was the 24th, and I'll be out there for like 10 days for the 3rd annual Asia International Hemp Expo.
Cool.
But before that, I just got back from Washington, D.C. for the National Indigenous Cannabis Policy Summit that was put on by the Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association, which is Rob Perro and Mary Jane Oatman.
Yeah. I met them out in Minnesota. I had met Mary Jane before. Cool. I mean, I should probably talk to them about the event, but how was it for you?
It was great. And I've got a podcast that I'm doing on that. And I have relaunched the Let's Talk Hemp podcast. We had talked about that. And I did one for Japan. I did one for Peru. I'm doing one for this. And then
Cool.
I'm doing a live Let's Talk Hemp podcast 4 days in a row at Asia International Hemp Expo on their Hemp Talk stage. So we'll
cool.
put up YouTube content and stuff. It's the first time I've ever done something like live on stage, and it'll be kind of a talk show type thing. And
yeah, that'd be cool. Send me those links, and then we'll sort of cross pollinate, and I'll let the people know how to go see you.
I'm putting your Green Build podcast in my newsletter that comes out tomorrow. So
good. Okay.
All the content that you're putting out, which is great content, I'd love to share in my newsletter. And it's, the more good content, the better. And I always appreciate all the people you're talking to and all the things that you're covering. So keep up the great work.
Yeah, thanks. Likewise. Like when you talk to people in the industry, there's this sense of cooperation, they call it. It's like camaraderie, it's cooperation, a little bit of competition, but not much because there's so much room in the space. And I feel like, like we're sort of media people, right? I mean, I work for a newspaper. You have a media production company. But it's not competition because we have the same goals. We have the same, like the shared interests. So it's cool. It's neat to be amongst my colleagues.
Yep. I shared your one plant article for the film that those guys are putting together, and I know they're still trying to raise their money. So
Yeah,
anybody there
we got to
listening
throw
to this,
money in.
go donate to the one plant guys that are trying to finish their film because there's a ton of great stuff in there.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I need to throw money in on that too. I get paid on Friday, so uh, cool. Well, all right. So we didn't really talk at all about the political change, right?
Okay.
The political climate change. Can we talk about climate change if we're referencing politics? Because
Political climate change. There we go.
I don't believe in that. No. But so yeah, things just shifted. The whole country here in the US just shifted to the right. There's a lot of questions around, the federal money that was being pushed, from the USDA or the EPA towards climate change mitigation initiatives. And the
Right.
new administration has said flat out, that's a hoax. We don't believe in it. So that money is going to be clawed back somehow. I've talked to a few people who have been, they have won the grants and they really need to they say they need to get them under contract by the end of the year or they're confident that money's gone, which is really disconcerting. But then, at Greenbuild, I was talking to Matty Mead and he had this really optimistic view that, like maybe this change will let sort of more philanthropic, is that the right word?
Yep.
Philanthropy. People invest into things because of climate change, because they see that the federal money has gone away. So maybe now there's going to be more investment from people, private capital. Who knows?
Well, let's hope so. It's yet to be seen. You got RFK and whether he gets appointed I mean, he's been suggested to be appointed over Health and Human Services. He's obviously a big regenerative agriculture guy. He believes that climate change is real, that humans have an impact on that. I don't know how much influence he really has on Trump outside of this health and wellness thing, which we'll see where that goes because there's so much money in big ag and the chemical side of things. And um, that stuff is a lot of that money goes to Republicans and the GOP. It goes to really both parties. And I don't, we'll just have to see. I know that they're looking at regen people for the head of the USDA. And if that's the case, then that would mean that there should be money for hemp. Regen people all know that hemp is part of the mix.
Yeah. And the other thing about with like the story of hemp is that you could ignore the climate change mitigation, carbon sequestration part of that story and still see it as, a way to revitalize small town America, to bring jobs, manufacturing jobs, processing jobs back to, middle America and just, like the economic benefits of growing industrial hemp are compelling, like as compelling.
Right. And I think that there's certainly a lot of people on the right that do understand that our soils and our farmland is in need of getting cleaned up. And I think because this is a bipartisan situation with hemp, I think um, that we're should be in an okay space. It's just going to be interesting to see how it rolls out. And with Elon being,
The
the head
first
of
buddy.
the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, which is, obviously intentional to call it that. Um, Him being what was like a climate person, and he's like chirping, he's like the first lady for Trump, really. I mean,
Well, he seems to be um, there more often than she is, I guess is what I'm trying to
right.
say.
And, he obviously has huge influence. You throw a couple $100 million at the election, and then all of a sudden your wealth increases by $60 billion in the week after. It's like, that's a pretty darn good investment.
Yeah.
But with the electric vehicles, he's getting subsidies. My understanding is that Tesla is incorporating hemp paneling into their vehicles in Europe. I heard this last year Asia International Hemp Expo from somebody who works for a company that is providing material for that. And I have not heard that publicly, but I heard it from somebody who's a very reliable source that provides materials to BMW and Audi and all that other stuff. So he's like, Tesla is on board. So Elon obviously knows about hemp, and I would think that he's a proponent of it.
Yeah, I know like the change in administration is terrifying to a lot of people. For a lot of people, it makes them extremely happy. But at this point, it's like I'm going to put my faith in America, right? And just be like, all right, this is what happened. This is how the vote went. I'm just going to ride it out. Like I've been through many administrations before, right? Like, and you just, we're just going to see what happens. So,
We can't do anything else other
right.
than we decide to move out of the country, which I am looking at Portugal, if I'm being honest here.
Well,
Also, that's another thing just to throw out there. I was asked to be on the board of directors for Normal in Portugal, which is going to be the first chapter of Normal in Europe. And so I am the hemp guy on that board of seven.
okay.
And with that, I have to apply for something there because so I can be affiliated as a board member on a nonprofit. But that would lead to being able to get a residency there if I was, wanted to do so. And it's like, what? I just keep the options open.
Keep
You
the
never
door
know.
open. Yeah, I mean, European citizenship doesn't sound so bad.
No, I mean, I like to travel all around the world. It's not like I would abandon the United States. I've got family here and I've got a business here, and I want to see this market continue to go in the right direction. And whatever I can do to help with that, I want to do.
I don't know much about Portugal. All that I know about Portugal, I learned from Jose Saramago. He's a Portuguese writer. I read a book called Libson many years ago. Lisbon, sorry, not Libsyn. That's the software program we use to host our podcast. This book was called Lisbon, like the city. So that's it.
Well,
Wow,
I
the
don't
people
know.
are getting their money's worth on this interview today, Morris.
They are. Well, I've only been through the airport there on the way to Prague, so I've never spent any time there. But a friend of mine, Jason Miles, moved there in the last couple of years. He's a jazz keyboardist, producer, worked with Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson.
Oh wow.
Super awesome guy who was based out in New York, and he's got his little quintet and quartet and stuff going on there. And there's a lot of Americans that have moved to Portugal. It's right below Spain, more affordable. Seems like a cool place.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, this episode is brought to you by the Portuguese Tourism Board. Yeah. Anyway, well, all right. So, it's
Farm Bill?
oh yeah, we need to talk about the Farm Bill. Well, just today. So we're recording this today, and today is what? November
19th.
19th. Yeah. Debbie Stabenow, is that how you say her name? She released the Farm Bill language from the Senate's version of the Farm Bill. This is a lame duck session. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but at least the language is out there. Who knows what's going to happen? It'll probably get kicked over to the next session of Congress, which is completely Republican controlled.
Well, we'll see. It just came out. I haven't read it. I read just a little overview that the Hemp Roundtable sent out, and concerning language in there for THCA flower and Delta 8 and some of the intoxicant side of things. I think it doesn't do anything harmful for CBD really, or for fiber and grain. I think that a lot of the language that the Industrial Hemp Farming Act had in there, and then the language that NIHC had put out there for fit for purpose and being able to visually expect and
The
whatever the
roundtable never misses a
seeds.
chance to send out a newsletter to stoke the fears, right?
Yeah, that's what goes on. But we'll see what happens. I don't think we're going to have a farm bill this year. I don't think anybody really thinks that's going to happen. I don't think the language that got released will be the final language concerning hemp. I think there will be some modifications to it. I would be concerned if I was in the THCA flower business, because I personally don't think that that's going to be around that much longer. So you get it while it's good, because that's adult use, and people shipping this stuff all over the place.
Yeah. See, that is so far off of my
into
radar. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. I just like, focusing on fiber and grain because I
right.
am a simpleton, right? Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what my mom always said anyway.
build houses, sequester carbon, um, feed people.
Yeah. I mean,
Make
I love the
art.
medicine side of it. I mean, I love all of it. Like, I'm not anti-cannabinoids at all.
Sure.
I think cannabinoids are wonderful medicine. Just, they don't need my help. I'm
No.
not sure industrial hemp needs I don't know. I'm just in it now, right?
Industrial absolutely need your help.
Yeah.
And when I got into this in 2012, I got into it, and the first thing I did was hook up with Wicked Hemp Footwear, and I was selling hemp shoes. So I was like the Al Bundy of hemp initially, schlepping hemp shoes and wallets and backpacks and stuff like that. And I could have got in the medical cannabis side and the adult use side here in Colorado. It's like, there's plenty of people doing that. I use it recreationally and I use it medicinally, but I don't want to be in that business. I want to do things that are environmentally conscious and try to help humanity and the planet. And that's been my focus. And intoxicants for me has always been, it's like, well, that's just a different market. That's not my market.
Whole different lane. You mentioned Al Bundy, and I don't know if people are going to get that reference because that's a bit of an old reference now, but that's the guy from Married with Children, right?
Oh yeah. He was a shoe salesman.
Yeah, yeah. But that
Yeah.
show was on in what, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s?
Al and Peggy Bundy and Kelly Bundy. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Wow. All right. So you're leaving on Sunday to go to Asia. Look forward to the Let's Talk Hemp podcast you put out there. So I hope you travel safe. May you have fair winds, and we'll see you on the other side.
Sounds good, Eric. And keep up the awesome work, like I said before. And yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side.
Right on. Thanks, Morris. All right, there you go. That's the show today. Thank you for listening. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the senior digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Get yourself a subscription to our print edition, or if you don't want the print edition but you still want to experience the greatness of our newspaper, you can get a digital-only subscription. Yeah. And you can read that on your iPad or your phone or whatever. Anyway, thank you for listening to today's show. I hope you have a great holiday if holidays are your thing. I, for one, am extremely grateful for the work that I get to do here. I am very thankful for all of you who tune in and listen to this show. And I am extremely grateful to the people who are in the hemp industry, who are building this thing and essentially building the future that I am determinately optimistic about. All right, anyway, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
This episode is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tim Bird Shadow.